Okay, thank you very much for inviting us along to speak at today's conference and present on our recent Adaptive Bike Share survey. It's been really interesting afternoon so far, and we're hoping to add to that today. And set in the context of the survey, the Scottish Government's ambition for Scotland's transport strategy is to set out in the National Transport Strategy published in 2020. The strategy articulates the government's vision as we will have sustainable, inclusive, safe and accessible transport system, helping to deliver a healthier, fairer and more prosperous Scotland for communities, businesses and visitors. In parallel with the development of the strategy has been the Scottish Government's work on the commitments within the Climate Change Update Plan, which requires the country to urgently lower its emissions and reliability on fossil fuels. By promoting the sustainable travel hierarchy, which prioritises walking, wheeling and cycling, supplemented by public and shared transport over single occupancy car journeys, we can more quickly realise, I've just realised my camera was covered there, sorry, the ambitions within our transport strategy and meet the obligations that we have in tackling climate change. This year in particular, with Scotland hosting COP26, there is a concerted effort across transport policy and delivery in Scotland to align plans and projects within these obligations. Increasing access to bikes and opportunities to enjoy cycling for all abilities is one of the key Scottish Government themes following the recent parliamentary elections. The best example of this is the commitment to provide a free bike for every child who cannot afford one, and this includes provision of for adaptive bikes. More widely, we had identified the need to assess the demand for having adaptive bikes as part of a traditional public bike share scheme. And we worked with colleagues in Cycling UK, Cycling Scotland, Max and Coma UK to design a survey that would capture the current experience of a wide range of current and potential bike share users. This is the first such survey commissioned by Transport Scotland and represents our commitment to providing an inclusive infrastructure for everyone to access bikes and enjoy cycling. Corra from Cycling UK will now provide an overview of the key headlines and messages from the survey results.
Thanks, Robyn. So yeah, as Robyn said, we ran this survey in the spring of this year. We had over 300 responses altogether. I'm actually going to talk about the 207 responses that came from disabled people, people who cared for disabled people, or other people who identified as adaptive bike users but didn't identify as disabled. So among that group, it was a mix of people's cycling experience, but generally enthusiastic for cycling. So about 40% of those respondents already cycled. 56% said they didn't currently cycle, but they would like to. 60% of the respondents said they didn't have access to a suitable bike, which we'll come back to. And then for the ones who did, that was a mix of adaptive bike users, but also people who might be using an e-bike or an upright two-wheeled bike. So quite a wide range of cycling experience and types of cycling and bike use already in the cohort. So there was a couple of things coming through from the survey that showed a kind of a real breadth of interest and demand from disabled people across the country in Scotland. So one of the things that really showed the kind of a range of preference was looking at bike types. So as Keith mentioned earlier, and also in the previous information from Portland, there are obviously lots of different types of adaptive bikes. So we asked people what they would prefer. They could choose more than one. The most popular was a three-wheeled trike. But this graph that's on the slide, one of the things that I think is important to take away from it is that there's a really wide spread. There's lots of interest across. Obviously, one type of bike is not going to be the best for everyone, and that's something to just always be bearing in mind and thinking about specific audiences and specific schemes. So another area where there was a real spread of interest was in terms of the preferred loan length. So this kind of reflects different types of bike share schemes. So the most popular was loan lengths of between 2 and 5 hours. But then after that, the next most popular was longer than 3 months, and then closely followed by 30 to 90 minutes, 1 to 7 days. So really a lot of different types of schemes. So again, not showing that there's one solution that will kind of meet everyone's needs. There's lots of different versions of an adaptive bike share scheme that could work for different people. So on the other hand, we also found that there were some areas where there was a bit more consistency in people's responses and kind of general agreement about preferences in terms of accessing the bike loans, the timing of ridings, and cycle infrastructure. So 71% of the respondents who were disabled or adaptive bike users said that support of some sort was essential or at least initially important for them to access a scheme. So that would mean something like advice, as the question was, how important would it be for you to have a staff or volunteer support to borrow a bike? So people were referencing things about needing a companion rider, needing advice on the type of bike, needing instruction on using a bike. So there was a majority saying that that was something that was important for them. We asked them when they might be interested in using bikes, and the weekends definitely came up top on that. Again, I mean, it was the most popular, it was more than 80% of responses, but there was still a lot of people interested in daytimes during the week and still in evenings, but yeah, a clear preference for weekend opportunities. And we asked people where they would be interested in cycling and in accessing bikes. So by far the most popular was being able to ride on segregated infrastructure, so off-road or separated cycle paths. I think that's something that is common to disabled and non-disabled riders, that people like to ride in spaces that feel safe. And then beyond that, there was still, so you can see there were two choices about cycling on the roads, and overall it was 52% of respondents said that they would be interested in cycling on roads. So yes, people want safe infrastructure, but people also wanted to be riding potentially, you know, some people wanted to be in the kind of a bike centre or park and kind of separated and maybe more of that recreational riding, whereas other people were definitely interested in kind of moving around their town, city, village, or their local area. So I'm going to hand back to Robyn now, who's going to talk about the next steps from the data we've collected.
Thanks, Corra. So from the data that we've collected, we've got strong evidence on the demand for the adaptive bikes, and I think that's been reflected throughout the day in everyone else's presentations as well. But as part of the next steps, we're intending to work with the partners who helped us create the survey, as well as bringing in groups such as Max and other stakeholders that would have an influence into the findings of this, and then agree actions and next steps with a wide range of people to ensure that anything that we do implement is a collective solution to the issues of not having adaptive bikes on offer in traditional public bike share schemes. And I think that's us for now.
Fantastic, thank you both very much. Just before you go, there has been a question which come up which says, has this survey been published? Has the results been published? And if not, would it be something that we could share with attendees?
So the results haven't been published yet, but we're looking to discuss them with the short-lived working group that helped create the survey initially, and then we'll have an initial discussion, and then we'll look to create a wider report which would find conclusive findings.
Fantastic. So we'll keep any attendees who are interested in that up to date with when that will be published.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Some really interesting results and definitely a lot for us all to take away.